Commander Ixora Voss stood at attention, her forearms clasped behind her back as she addressed the gathered Nexilian cadets. The lecture hall buzzed with nervous energy, a sea of blue-tinged faces and twitching antennae focused intently on their superior. "Cadets, your attention please," Voss's voice boomed, instantly silencing the room. Today marks a historic moment for the Nexilian Defense Force. After cycles of negotiations, we've finally established an exchange program with a species known as humans. A ripple of excitement coursed through the room. Humans were still relatively unknown in the galactic community, having only achieved faster-than-light travel a mere decade ago. Their rapid technological advancement had caught the attention of several spacefaring races, including the Nexilians. "Now, I know what you're thinking," Voss continued, her secondary eyes narrowing. "Humans, those squishy bipeds from that backwater planet, what could they possibly teach us about combat?" She paused, letting the question hang in the air. A brave cadet in the front row, Zeph Luminar, raised a tentacle. "Commander, isn't their planet classified as a death world? Surely that counts for something." Voss nodded approvingly. "Excellent point, Cadet Luminar. Yes, Earth is indeed considered a death world by galactic standards. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, and a plethora of natural disasters. It's precisely why we're interested in their training methods." The commander activated a holographic display, showing images of human athletes performing various feats of strength and agility. The cadets watched in awe as humans lifted massive weights, sprinted at incredible speeds, and performed acrobatic maneuvers that seemed to defy the laws of physics. This, cadets, is what humans call physical education, or PE for short, Voss explained. It's a mandatory part of their early education system, designed to keep their bodies in peak condition. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the audience. The idea of compulsory physical training for all citizens, not just military personnel, was foreign to the Nexilians. "But sir," another cadet, Lyra Zenith, spoke up, "how does this relate to our combat training? Surely their primitive exercises can't compare to our advanced simulation chambers." Voss's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Ah, Cadet Zenith, that's where you're wrong. The human approach to physical training is unconventional, to say the least. They've developed methods that push their bodies to the absolute limit, often in ways that seem counterintuitive or even dangerous by our standards." She switched the holographic display to show footage of human military training exercises. The cadets watched in stunned silence as soldiers crawled through mud under barbed wire, scaled towering walls, and engaged in hand-to-hand combat. "This, cadets, is what we're after," Voss declared. "The raw, primal intensity of human physical training. We believe incorporating these methods into our own regimen could give us a significant edge in future conflicts." The room erupted in excited chatter. The prospect of learning new, potentially game-changing training techniques had the cadets buzzing with anticipation. "Silence!" Voss barked, instantly regaining control of the room. "Now here's where it gets interesting. We're not just studying their methods, we're experiencing them firsthand." She paused for dramatic effect, her primary eyes scanning the room. In exactly one solar cycle, a group of human PE instructors will arrive on Nexilia Prime to oversee a special training program, and you, cadets, will be the first to participate. The announcement was met with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Cadet Luminar's antennae twitched nervously. "Commander, what exactly should we expect?" Voss's mandibles spread in what passed for a Nexilian smile. "Expect the unexpected, Cadet Luminar. These humans have a saying, no pain, no gain. I suggest you prepare yourselves for both." As the commander dismissed the cadets, the lecture hall filled with animated discussions. Some were eager to test themselves against the human training methods, while others were more skeptical. Cadet Zenith caught up with Luminar in the hallway. "Can you believe this, Zeph? Human PE instructors? What's next? Learning warfare from Glorbian slime molds?" Luminar's secondary eyes blinked in thought. "I don't know, Lyra. There's got to be a reason the High Command is so interested in human physical training. Maybe we shouldn't underestimate them." As they made their way to the dining hall, neither cadet could have predicted just how drastically their lives were about to change. The arrival of the human PE instructors would mark the beginning of a transformation that would reshape not just the Nexilian Defense Force, but the entire balance of power in the galaxy. Little did they know, light years away on Earth, a group of seasoned PE teachers was preparing for their own journey into the unknown. Among them was Coach Axel Steele, a veteran instructor known for his unorthodox methods and iron will. As he packed his bags, Steele couldn't help but grin at the challenge ahead. "All right, you alien cadets," he muttered to himself. "Let's see if you're ready for some real physical education." The Nexilian cadets stood in neat rows on the parade ground, their exoskeletons gleaming in the twin suns of Nexilia Prime. The air was thick with anticipation as they awaited the arrival of their new instructors. Suddenly, a low rumble filled the air. Cadet Zeph Luminar's antennae twitched nervously as he spotted a boxy, Earth-made shuttle descending from the sky. "Here they come," he whispered to Lyra Zenith, who stood rigidly beside him. The shuttle touched down with a thud that seemed to reverberate through the entire base. As the dust settled, the hatch hissed open, and out stepped 5 figures that would change the face of Nexilian military training forever. Leading the pack was a broad-shouldered human male with a shaved head and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. This was Coach Axel Steele, and his very presence seemed to radiate an aura of intensity that made even the most hardened Nexilian warriors feel a twinge of unease. "All right, listen up." Steele's voice boomed across the parade ground, causing several cadets to flinch. "I'm Coach Steele, and these are my colleagues. We're here to whip you into shape, and let me tell you, it ain't gonna be pretty." Commander Voss stepped forward, her secondary eyes narrowing as she assessed the human instructor. "Coach Steele, welcome to Nexilia Prime. I trust you've been briefed on our physiology and capabilities?" Steele's laugh was like gravel in a blender. "Oh, we've been briefed all right. 4 arms, exoskeletons, enhanced night vision. Impressive stuff. But let me tell you something, Commander. Where I come from, we've got a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." The translator in plants struggled to convey the idiom, leaving most of the cadets looking confused. Steele didn't seem to notice or care. "Now, who's ready for some real physical education?" he bellowed, clapping his hands together with a sound like a thunderclap. What followed was nothing short of a cultural collision. The human instructors introduced exercises and training methods that seemed bizarre and often counterintuitive to the Nexilian cadets. "What do you mean we have to drop and give you 20? Cadet Zenith complained as she struggled to perform what the humans called a push-up. Her 4 arms splayed awkwardly as she tried to lower and raise her body. Coach Steele loomed over her, his voice a constant barrage of encouragement and criticism. "Come on, Zenith. My grandmother can do better than that, and she's been dead for 30 years. Nearby, Cadet Luminar was having his own struggles with a contraption the humans called a jump rope. His antennae kept getting tangled in the rope as he attempted to leap over it. "Focus, Luminar," shouted Assistant Coach Rhea Patel, her dark eyes flashing. "It's all about rhythm. Imagine you're dodging laser fire on the battlefield." As the days wore on, the initial shock began to wear off, replaced by a grudging respect. The cadets found themselves pushed to limits they never knew they had. Muscles they didn't even know existed ached with a fierce intensity. One afternoon, during a particularly grueling session of what the humans called circuit training, Cadet Zenith collapsed to the ground, her exoskeleton heaving as she gasped for breath. I can't do this anymore," she panted, all 4 of her arms trembling with exhaustion. Coach Steele knelt beside her, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "Listen, kid, you think this is tough? Try growing up on Earth. Every day is a fight against gravity that's trying to crush you, weather that's trying to kill you, and a planet that doesn't give a damn whether you live or die." He helped her to her feet, his grip firm but encouraging. "That's why we train like this, because when everything's trying to take you down, you've got to be tougher than everything. Now, are you going to let a little thing like exhaustion beat you?" Something sparked in Zenith's eyes. With a growl of determination, she pushed herself up and rejoined the training circuit. As weeks turned into months, the changes in the cadets became impossible to ignore. Their movements were sharper, more efficient. Their endurance had increased exponentially. Even their problem-solving skills had improved. honed by the unorthodox challenges the human instructors constantly threw at them. Commander Voss watched from her office window, her mandibles clicking in satisfaction. The experiment was working better than she could have hoped. But a nagging worry gnawed at the back of her mind. The cadets were changing, yes, but into what? One evening, as the exhausted cadets dragged themselves to the mess hall, Luminar turned to Zenith with a glint in his primary eyes. You know, Lyra, I think I'm starting to understand why the humans are so intense all the time. Zenith nodded, flexing her newly strengthened arms. It's like Coach Steele says, if you're not pushing your limits, you're not living. As they entered the mess hall, they were greeted by an unusual sight. Coach Steele and his team were attempting to navigate the Nexilian cafeteria system, their faces scrunched up in confusion as they examined the nutrient tubes and protein synthesizers. Hey, any of you kids know how to work this thing? Steele called out, poking at a food replicator with a mixture of curiosity and frustration. I'm trying to get something that resembles a cheeseburger, but all I'm getting is this purple goop. The cadets exchanged glances, then burst into laughter. For the first time, they realized that cultural adaptation was a two-way street. As much as they were learning from the humans, perhaps they had something to teach in return. As Luminar stepped forward to help Coach Steele navigate the alien technology, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They were all in this together, humans and Nexilians alike, fumbling their way towards a new understanding. Little did they know, this newfound camaraderie would soon be put to the ultimate test. For beyond the training grounds of Nexilia Prime, events were unfolding that would thrust these unlikely allies into the heart of a galactic crisis. The real challenge was yet to come, and it would take every ounce of their combined strength and ingenuity to face it. The klaxons blared through the Nexilian military base, jarring both cadets and human instructors from their sleep. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in an eerie glow as confused voices filled the air. What the hell is going on? Coach Steele bellowed, emerging from his quarters in nothing but sweatpants, his muscular frame tense and ready for action. Commander Voss's voice crackled over the intercom, her usual calm demeanor tinged with urgency. All personnel report to the main hangar immediately. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. As cadets and instructors alike rushed to the hangar, wild speculations flew. Was it a surprise training exercise? An attack? The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. The massive hangar doors slid open, revealing a scene of controlled chaos. Nexilian officers rushed back and forth, barking orders and coordinating with frantic efficiency. At the center of it all stood Commander Voss, her four arms working in perfect synchronization as she manipulated a series of holographic displays. Listen up, everyone. Voss's voice cut through the commotion like a laser. We've just received a distress signal from the Zephyrian mining colony on Epsilon 9. They're under attack by an unknown hostile force. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The Zephyrians were a peaceful race, known more for their artistic achievements than any military prowess. Voss continued, her secondary eyes scanning the assembled group. Our fleet is engaged elsewhere, and we're the closest unit available to respond. I know this is unprecedented, but we have no choice. We're going in. Coach Steele stepped forward, his face a mask of grim resolve. With all due respect, Commander, my team and I are PE teachers, not soldiers. What exactly do you expect us to do? Voss fixed him with a stare that could melt steel. Coach, over the past months, I've watched you transform our cadets into something extraordinary. They're stronger, faster, and more adaptable than any unit I've ever commanded. And right now, they're our only hope. Steele's expression softened, a hint of pride creeping into his voice. Well, when you put it that way, all right, team, looks like we're about to put all that training to the test. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Cadets were hastily outfitted with combat gear, while the human instructors received crash courses in Nexilian weapons systems. As they boarded the sleek Nexilian assault craft, Cadet Luminar felt a mix of excitement and terror coursing through his body. He turned to Cadet Zenith, who was checking her plasma rifle with shaking hands. Hey, Lyra, he whispered, remember what Coach Steele always says? Fear is just false evidence appearing real, Zenith finished, a small smile playing across her mandibles. Thanks, Zeph. I needed that. The assault craft broke through Nexilia Prime's atmosphere with a bone-rattling roar. As they hurtled through space towards Epsilon 9, Commander Voss briefed the team on what little information they had. The attackers appear to be using some kind of advanced cloaking technology. Our long-range scanners can't get a lock on them. We're going in blind, people. Coach Steele, now clad in an Nexilian exosuit that barely contained his bulky frame, let out a low whistle. Invisible enemies on an alien planet, and here I thought dodgeball was challenging. As they approached Epsilon 9, the true scale of the situation became apparent. The once peaceful mining colony was in flames, its structures crumbling under a relentless assault from an unseen enemy. Incoming! The pilot's shout was followed by a violent lurch as the craft dodged a barrage of energy blasts seemingly fired from thin air. Evasive maneuvers, Voss ordered. Get us on the ground now! The landing was rough, throwing everyone against their restraints. As the hatch opened, they were greeted by a scene of utter chaos. Zephyrian civilians ran screaming through the streets, pursued by shimmering distortions in the air that could only be the cloaked attackers. All right, listen up. Steele's voice boomed over the cacophony. This ain't no different from any other challenge we've faced. Stay focused, watch each other's backs, and remember your training. As the team spread out, their Nexilian combat training melded seamlessly with the unconventional tactics they'd learned from their human instructors. Cadet Luminar found himself using a piece of debris as a makeshift pommel horse, vaulting over it to dodge enemy fire while returning shots with pinpoint accuracy. Nearby, Cadet Zenith was a blur of motion, her four arms working in perfect harmony as she engaged in hand-to-hand combat with a partially decloaked attacker. The countless hours of CrossFit from hell, as Coach Patel had dubbed it, were paying off in spades. Even the human instructors were holding their own. Coach Steele, his bulky exosuit notwithstanding, moved with a grace that belied his size. He charged headlong into a group of attackers, using wrestling moves that sent them flying. "Remember, kids," he shouted, body slamming a cloaked figure into the ground. In dodgeball or combat, the principle's the same. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a plasma bolt. As the battle raged on, a pattern began to emerge. The attackers, for all their advanced technology, seemed unprepared for the unorthodox fighting style of the Nexilian human team. Their cloaking devices, while effective against standard tactics, proved less useful against opponents who could predict movement and respond with lightning-fast reflexes honed by months of grueling PE sessions. Commander Voss, coordinating the defense from a makeshift command center, couldn't help but marvel at the sight. Her cadets, once clumsy and unsure, now moved like well-oiled machines, and the humans, despite their alien physiology, fought alongside the Nexilians as if they'd been born to it. As the tide of battle began to turn, a massive shape suddenly materialized in the sky above, the attacker's mothership, finally revealing itself. "Holy shit!" Coach Steele exclaimed, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and determination. "Now, that's what I call a final boss." The appearance of the mothership should have been demoralizing. Instead, it seemed to galvanize the defenders. Cadets and instructors alike shared a look of grim determination. They had come too far, overcome too much, to back down now. As they prepared to face this new, towering threat, Cadet Luminar felt a strange calm settle over him. He looked around at his fellow cadets, at the human instructors who had become more than just teachers, and at the grateful Zephyrian civilians they were protecting. In that moment, he realized that this was what all their training had been for. Not just to make them stronger or faster, but to forge them into a team capable of facing the unknown, of pushing beyond their limits when it mattered most. With renewed determination, the unlikely band of heroes turned to face the looming mothership. Whatever came next, they would face it together, Nexilians, humans, and the spirit of the most intense PE class the galaxy had ever seen. The real test was just beginning, and the universe watched with bated breath to see if this improbable team could rise to the challenge. The massive alien mothership loomed over the battlefield, its hull shimmering with an otherworldly energy that seemed to distort the very fabric of space around it. For a moment, both defenders and attackers alike paused, awestruck by the sheer scale of the vessel. Coach Steele was the first to break the silence. Well, I'll be damned. That thing's bigger than my ex-wife's alimony payments. His quip, absurd as it was in the face of such danger, broke the spell of fear that had begun to settle over the group. Cadet Zenith let out a chittering laugh, her mandibles clicking rapidly. "Coach," she said, her voice filled with a newfound confidence, "got any bright ideas for taking down that monstrosity?" Steele's eyes narrowed as he studied the ship, his mind racing through years of unorthodox problem-solving techniques. "You know, back on Earth, we had this game called Capture the Flag. I'm thinking it might be time for a little galactic version." Commander Voss, overhearing the exchange, raised an eyebrow ridge. "Explain, Coach, quickly." As Steele outlined his audacious plan, a mix of disbelief and excitement spread through the group. It was crazy, borderline suicidal even. But then again, so was facing an advanced alien force with a bunch of cadets and PE teachers. "It's insane," Voss declared after a moment of consideration. Then, to everyone's surprise, her mandibles spread in what passed for a Nexilian grin. "Let's do it." The plan was simple in theory, but dauntingly complex in execution. While the bulk of their forces would continue to engage the enemy on the ground, drawing their attention, a small team would infiltrate the mothership itself. Their goal, locate the ship's central control system and, in Coach Patel's words, pull the plug. "Remember," Steele barked as the infiltration team prepared for their daring mission, "this ain't no different from scaling the rock wall in gym class. Except, with the added bonus of certain death if you fall." The team consisted of cadets Luminar and Zenith, Coach Steele, and to everyone's surprise, Commander Voss herself. "I'm not sending my people on a suicide mission without leading from the front," she had declared, brooking no argument. As they approached the mothership in a commandeered enemy shuttle, using the cloaking technology they'd reverse-engineered during the battle, tension hung thick in the air. Luminar's antennae twitched nervously as he piloted the craft, every sensor in his body on high alert. "Steady now, kid," Steele murmured, his usual boisterous tone replaced by something softer, almost paternal. "Remember your breathing exercises, in through the nose, out through the mouth, or whatever passes for a mouth in your case." They managed to slip past the mothership's defenses, landing in a deserted hangar bay. As they disembarked, the sheer scale of the vessel's interior hit them. Corridors stretched out in every direction, a labyrinthine maze of alien technology. "All right, team," Voss whispered, her four eyes scanning for any sign of movement. "Remember the plan. We find the control room, we shut this thing down, we get out. Simple." "Yeah, simple," Zenith muttered. "Like that time Coach made us run a marathon, underwater, in full gear." They moved swiftly through the ship, their progress a testament to the months of grueling training they'd endured. Every obstacle became a challenge to overcome. Sealed doors were treated like vault boxes in gymnastics, leaped over or slid under with acrobatic grace. Patrolling enemy squads were avoided using dodging techniques honed in countless games of hyper-intense dodgeball. As they delved deeper into the ship, the signs of the alien presence grew more pronounced. Strange, pulsating organic matter began to appear on the walls and floors, giving the corridors an unsettling, living quality. "Well, that's just delightful," Steele grumbled, careful not to touch the writhing surfaces. "Reminds me of the time the gym's locker room got that mold problem, except, sentient." Despite the danger, there was an undeniable rhythm to their progress. The team moved in perfect synchronization, each member's strengths complementing the others. Luminar's heightened senses allowed him to detect approaching enemies. Zenith's four arms made short work of any physical barriers. Voss's tactical mind kept them oriented in the twisting corridors. And Steele's unwavering determination kept them all going. His constant stream of Earth-based motivational quips becoming a strange source of comfort in the alien environment. Finally, after what felt like hours of tense navigation, they reached what could only be the ship's central control room. A massive, pulsating organic mass dominated the center of the chamber, tendrils of energy snaking out to connect with various consoles and displays. "Oh, fantastic," Steele breathed, his eyes wide. "It's like someone crossbred a supercomputer with a giant squid. Any bright ideas on how to shut this thing down?" Before anyone could respond, a piercing alarm shattered the relative quiet. They'd been detected. "Looks like we're out of time for subtlety," Voss growled, drawing her weapon. "We do this the hard way. Attack!" What followed was a blur of action that pushed each of them to their absolute limits. Zenith and Luminar moved in perfect tandem, their Nexilian combat training amplified by the human-inspired techniques they'd learned. They darted between control panels, sabotaging systems with a precision that would have made any tech expert proud. Voss was a whirlwind of tactical brilliance, calling out enemy positions and weak points in the ship's defenses, even as she engaged in fierce close-quarters combat with the ship's security forces. And Coach Steele? He was in his element, treating the whole scenario like the world's most intense obstacle course. He vaulted over consoles, used enemy weapons against their wielders, and at one point even swung from a hanging cable like it was a gym rope, all while shouting encouragement to his team. "Come on, you alien squid brains," he roared, ducking under a barrage of energy blasts. "Is that all you've got? I've seen tougher resistance from a bunch of kindergartners on Sugar Rush." As the battle raged, Luminar found himself face to face with the central organic mass. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "It's the core," he shouted over the chaos. "We need to overload it." Zenith was at his side in an instant, her forearms working furiously at a nearby console. "On it, but we'll need to trigger the overload manually. Someone has to stay behind." A moment of heavy silence fell over the team, the implications sinking in. Then, without hesitation, Coach Steele stepped forward. "Well, kids," he said, a wry smile on his face, "looks like it's time for the coach to take one for the team." "But sir," Luminar began, only to be cut off by Steele's raised hand. "No buts, cadet. This is what we've been training for. Sometimes, being a leader means making the tough calls. Now get your scaly butts out of here. That's an order." As the team reluctantly prepared to evacuate, Steele turned to face the pulsating core, cracking his knuckles. "All right, you oversized calamari. Let's see how you handle a little high-intensity interval training, Earth style." The last thing the team saw as they raced back to their shuttle was Coach Steele, silhouetted against the glowing core, his booming laugh echoing through the chamber as he prepared to unleash hell. As their shuttle rocketed away from the mothership, a blinding flash lit up the sky. The massive vessel shuddered, then began to break apart, its systems failing catastrophically. In the stunned silence that followed, Cadet Zenith turned to Commander Voss, her voice thick with emotion. "Commander, did we just save a planet using PE-class techniques?" Voss nodded slowly, her four eyes fixed on the disintegrating mothership. "Indeed we did, Cadet. Indeed we did." As they descended back to the surface of Epsilon 9, where the remaining enemy forces were already surrendering in confusion, the full weight of their achievement began to sink in. They had faced an overwhelming alien threat and emerged victorious, armed with little more than their wits, their training, and the indomitable spirit of a truly legendary PE instructor. The battle was over, but its repercussions would echo across the galaxy for years to come. And somewhere, in whatever afterlife awaited a tough-as-nails gym teacher with a heart of gold, Coach Steele was undoubtedly looking down on his students with pride, probably planning the most intense celestial workout the universe had ever seen. The twin suns of Nexilia Prime cast long shadows across the parade ground as the assembled crowd waited in anticipation. It had been 6 standard months since the Battle of Epsilon 9, and the galaxy was still reeling from the implications of that fateful day. Commander Ixora Voss stood at attention, her 4 arms clasped behind her back as she addressed the gathered dignitaries, military personnel, and cadets. Among the crowd, cadets Zeph Luminar and Lyra Zenith fidgeted nervously, their exoskeletons polished to a mirror shine for the occasion. "Honored guests," Voss began, her voice carrying across the hushed assembly, "we are gathered here today to commemorate an event that has reshaped our understanding of galactic defense, interspecies cooperation, and the profound impact of physical education." A ripple of amusement passed through the crowd at the last part, but it was tinged with respect. The story of how a group of Nexilian cadets and human PE teachers had saved a planet had spread like wildfire across the galaxy, becoming something of a legend in its own right. In light of the unprecedented success of the human Nexilian training program, Voss continued, the Galactic Council has approved the establishment of a new interspecies training academy. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all designations, I present to you the Steel Intergalactic Academy of Physical and Tactical Excellence. The crowd erupted in cheers as a holographic display flickered to life, showing the plans for a massive new facility that would combine the best of Nexilian technology with human-inspired training methods. As the applause died down, Voss's voice took on a more somber tone. However, we must also take a moment to remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice to ensure our victory. Coach Axel Steele gave his life to save not just Epsilon 9, but potentially the entire galaxy from an unprecedented threat. The assembly bowed their heads in a moment of silence. Luminar felt a lump form in his throat as he remembered the gruff but caring human who had pushed him beyond limits he never knew he had. Suddenly, a commotion at the back of the crowd caught everyone's attention. Gasps of shock and disbelief rippled through the assembly as a figure limped forward, supported by two Zephyrian medical officers. "Now hold on just a goddamn minute," a familiar voice boomed, rough as gravel but unmistakably alive. "I hope you're not planning this shindig without the guest of honor. Coach Steele?" Zenith's voice cracked with emotion as she and Luminar rushed forward, barely able to believe their eyes. There, battered, bruised, but very much alive, stood Coach Axel Steele. His left arm was in a sling, his face bore new scars, and he leaned heavily on a cane, but his eyes still held that indomitable spark. How is this possible?" Commander Voss stammered, for once losing her composure. Steele grinned, wincing slightly at the movement. "Well, Commander, turns out that when you spend months training in high-gravity environments and dodging plasma bolts, you pick up a few tricks for surviving massive explosions. That, and I got real lucky. Found an escape pod at the last second, crashed on one of Epsilon 9's moons. The Zephyrians picked me up about a week ago." As the initial shock wore off, the parade ground erupted in cheers and applause. Cadets Luminar and Zenith couldn't contain themselves, rushing forward to embrace their mentor, careful of his injuries. All right, enough with the waterworks," Steele grumbled, but there was no hiding the emotion in his voice. "You'll ruin my tough guy image." Commander Voss stepped forward, all four of her eyes blinking rapidly in what could only be the Nexilian equivalent of holding back tears. "Coach Steele, on behalf of the Nexilian Defense Force, the people of Epsilon 9, and dare I say, the entire galaxy, welcome back." As Steele was helped to the podium, the crowd fell silent once more, eager to hear what the legendary instructor had to say. "Listen up, because I'm only going to say this once," Steele began, his voice gaining strength with each word. "What we did out there, what you did out there," he nodded to Luminar, Zenith, and the other cadets. "It wasn't about fancy technology or superior firepower. It was about heart. It was about pushing beyond your limits, about working together despite our differences." He paused, surveying the diverse crowd before him. "I've spent my life teaching kids how to be stronger, faster, better. But you all taught me something too. You showed me that when the galaxy throws its worst at us, we can stand together and give it our best right back." The assembly hung on his every word. Nexilians, humans, and representatives from a dozen other species, all united in this moment. "So here's what we're gonna do," Steele continued, a familiar glint of mischief entering his eyes. "We're gonna take this fancy new academy, and we're gonna turn it into the most badass training facility the universe has ever seen. We're gonna bring together beings from every corner of the galaxy, and we're gonna teach them not just how to fight, but how to live. How to push themselves, how to work together, how to face the unknown with grit and determination." He grinned, and for a moment, everyone present could see the indomitable spirit that had faced down an alien armada with nothing but sheer willpower and a lifetime of gym class experience. "Because let me tell you something," Steele's voice rose to a roar. "The next time some cosmic bully thinks they can push us around, they're gonna learn what happens when you mess with a galaxy that does its push-ups." The parade ground exploded in cheers, applause, and the various celebratory sounds of a dozen different species. As Steele was swarmed by well-wishers, Cadets Luminar and Zenith shared a look of pride and determination. "You know," Luminar said, his antennae twitching with excitement, "I have a feeling this is just the beginning." Zenith nodded, her forearms flexing unconsciously. "Yeah, And whatever comes next, we'll face it together, as a team. As the celebration continued around them, the unlikely heroes of Epsilon 9 stood tall, ready to usher in a new era of galactic cooperation, one jumping jack at a time. The universe would never be the same, and somehow, that seemed like the best possible outcome. In the years to come, the Steel Intergalactic Academy would become a beacon of unity and strength, producing generations of defenders ready to face any challenge. And at its heart would always be the spirit of that first, incredible class, where a bunch of Nexilian cadets and one tough-as-nails human PE teacher proved that sometimes the greatest power in the universe is the ability to just keep pushing forward, no matter the odds. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and it was a simple one. Never underestimate the power of a well-taught PE class.